Okay, welcome. After the Christmas break, I want to go over today a very unusual weather phenomenon that's happening in America today called a polar vortex. I did not cover this in my talk to you about the weather situation. Okay, that's all. Just you go out there and please tell them to be quiet. I have about a 3-minute video from the NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw that actually talks about this event, and so I'm going to broadcast it here, and I hope you can hear it. It covers two things called a polar vortex, which is a very unusual situation of extremely cold weather coming down from the North Pole. And oh, by the way, it's affecting every state in America except Hawaii. They said tonight, and tonight is January 7th, every state in America except in Hawaii will have sub-freezing weather, which is kind of unusual. We're talking Florida, we're talking Georgia, we're talking Arizona. So it's quite unusual. At the end of this, they also talk about something called lake effect snow. And we covered that in our aviation weather also, so I want you to look at that, please.
Schools closed in Atlanta tomorrow. In Nashville, the temperature has dropped more than 50 degrees since just last night. Al Roker's here with us in the studio with how bad this gets and how far south, Al.
Well, Brian, I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 35 years. I don't ever remember something this widespread, this far south, and it's not going to get better for at least the next 24 hours. This Arctic outbreak, basically, this brutally cold air is all due to the phrase we've all come to know and love over the last 24 hours, the polar vortex. It usually is up over the North Pole. A weakening jet has let it break loose and come down to the south. It's basically an Arctic hurricane funneling those counterclockwise winds. And so here's what we're looking for tonight as that system makes its way down to the south tomorrow. Dangerously cold air all the way down into southern Georgia and parts of northern Florida. Marquette tonight will feel like 35 degrees, 16 below it'll feel like in Roanoke, 13 in New York City, Chicago 35 below. Tomorrow morning's lows, Wednesday morning's lows. Look at this, it'll feel like 3 below in New York City, Roanoke 10, 11 below in Chicago. Do we get some relief? Well, here's what happens. By late in the week, this polar vortex moves backward, belongs up to the north, and so what that will allow is for it finally to break its grip. You'll start to see those winds now coming more zonal, a zonal flow from west to east, a little more Pacific moisture, and so temperatures get back to where they should be in the low 40s along the coast, upper 30s elsewhere. But the next thing we're worried about, a major outbreak of lake effect snow. Over the next 24 hours, Brian, we're talking about snowfall amounts that are going to exceed 3 to 4 feet of snow between Syracuse, New York, and Watertown, my alma mater, Oswego, right there in the midst of it. So it's going to be rough.
Thankfully, we have good weather for college football in California, but that's about it as you look at the map. Al Roker, thank you, as always.
Okay, so what I'd like you to see is the fact that when he went over this, he was actually talking about a Arctic hurricane, okay? Which way does a low system have the winds blow?
Counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise, that's exactly right. So when you have a low system affecting stuff, the winds are blowing in a counterclockwise operation, and you can actually see, I'm going to bring it up here, see on one of these, I turned off the volume here so I can talk. You can see that this unusual low is actually coming down from the North Pole. And if you understand what we just talked about in class before Christmas, this is a counterclockwise low. This is incredibly unusual. This is exactly what a true hurricane looks like when it attacks the East Coast or the Philippines or comes up the Sea of Cortez, and that is why the cold air is coming down. If it was a high, if that L was a high, which way does the wind blow?
Clockwise.
So which way would the wind be blowing? If it was an H there,
Clockwise.
where would the wind be blowing? North. It would be warming up Canada instead of cooling down America. So this is quite unusual. And then he said that the jet stream is coming south because of a weak jet stream. What is a jet stream, guys? Yes?
It's a channel of air that goes all the way around the world.
Exactly. High speed air at high altitude, like up over 100 knots, 150 knots. And so the weak jet stream, which usually keeps this low north, has broken up and it has come south. But then he said at the end of the week, this actual polar hurricane will start to go north again. And then once it starts to go north again, then what happens to the jet streams? They come back, yes. Oh, by the way, we're over here in Arizona, and we're not used to this type of weather. When I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, right down here on the bottom, the coldest, I was there for 5 years, 4.5 years, the coldest weather I ever experienced was 12 degrees. And that was one time, and it was miserable, one day. And I remember it. It was so cold, your nose hairs froze, okay? When you get in the teens and it's moist and it's hot, it's cold and wet, you get really frozen. But now look at it, we're talking -5. Do you think this is going to affect the citrus, the oranges in Florida? I mean, last night and today, farmers are losing millions of dollars of crop because of this cold. This is crazy. And so you realize there's no schools going on in Chicago. They shut down the whole school system when they have this type of cold weather. And here we are loving, the 60-degree weather and the sun and mountain biking. This is why we live in Arizona. All right, so here it goes back north. And when it goes back north, what happens to the regular jet streams then? The regular jet streams come back. Where do the jet streams come from? They come from the west, just like that. That is why the weather generally comes not from the north. This is unusual that it's coming down from the north, but it's also now coming from the west, and they'll bring in the more normal weather for us. We talked about lake effect snow. What is lake effect snow? Lake, L-A-K, something you don't understand because you live in Arizona. A lake is something big with water in it, okay? Of course, in Arizona, it's something big without water in it. That's a lake, too. Like rivers, right? Did you know rivers usually have water in them?
Well, usually.
I'm just kidding. Okay. I'll tell you a funny story. I grew up in South Carolina. Of course, they have tons of lakes and rivers, ton of them. I came out to Arizona, and I drove in Phoenix, across from Phoenix out to Luke Air Force Base, and we crossed a river called Agua Fria.
Yes, sir.
And I'm a smart guy, right? I go, hey, I speak French. I didn't speak Spanish. Agua Fria, and I'm looking down, and there is not a drop of water in it. Matter of fact, the actual river is a gravel pit. The river, okay? That's at I-10, if y'all seen that. And so I go by, and I say, Agua Fria, you know what that must mean to me? Free of water. And I go, that's pretty smart of these Arizona people to name Agua Fria free of water. I was dumb. What does Agua Fria mean?
It's cold water.
Cold water, yeah, I was dumb. Because why do they name it cold water? They should call it dry water, gravel water. And so, yes, believe it or not, there are lakes and rivers that actually have water in it. I'm just kidding. All right, and these are called the Great Lakes. And this is called lake effect snow. Yes, sir.
You know, I know one of the tricks I remember to know all the names of the lakes.
What? Say it.
It's Huron, and then Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior.
That's exactly right. And these are the two lakes up here, the northern part of New York. And when they talk about lake effect snow, are they talking about 5 inches in an afternoon?
Nice.
How much did he talk about?
3 to 4 feet.
We're talking 3 to 4 feet in one day. Is that a lot of snow? So when we sit here and whine that, oh, we got 6 inches of snow and it's on the water, you know, 6 inches, that's just terrible. These people have feet of snow. And it's because it comes off of the lake and it stays continually moist, and then it goes over They call them mountains, but they're actually little hills compared to us. And then all of a sudden, with the lake effect snow, we have 3 and 4 feet of snow coming over these hills. And this is kind of unusual when we're talking 4 feet. Usually it's like 2 feet, okay? And so can you imagine, do you know Buffalo, New York, right up here? One of their big expenses is putting snow on railroad cars to take it out of town. What are you going to do with the snow? Okay?
It'll just fall.
You got 4 feet of snow. What are you going to do with it? You can't melt it. It's going to be there for 5 months. What do? Well, let's ship it out of town. Okay? So that's what they do. So I just wanted to make sure you guys
Send it to.
That one's in Arizona.
send it to Arizona as water. Send it to Agua Fria. All righty. That's our.